Breaking news, ICE raids, Northern Virginia, folks. Come on in, ICE, DHS, FBI, federal authorities are rounding up illegals in Virginia, Northern Virginia in particular, folks. Arlington, Virginia, McLean, Virginia, Fairfax, Virginia, Aspen, Virginia, all those sections right outside Washington, D.C. Massive ICE raids have been going on for the past week, folks. This is big. Considering that the governor of Virginia, Youngkin, he signed an executive order allowing state police in Virginia to cooperate with federal immigration officers to round up these ICE raids. Oh, in the community there, some people in the community are not happy at all. There was a massive protest in Arlington, Virginia by a bunch of locals talking about, they're not satisfied with ICE. They're in fear of ICE, this, that, and the other. And we're definitely going to show that down the line. But we want to talk about these ICE raids in Virginia. They've been going on, but at the same time, there's been ICE leakers. And big news today, it has been announced by Kristi Noem, Department of Homeland Security Secretary. She's announced that 2 leakers have been positively identified, and these leakers will be prosecuted very, very soon. So I can't wait to get the names of the leakers. She's saying that they put law enforcement lives in jeopardy. But this is the big deal, folks. We've been covering the ICE raids all across the United States and communities. And Virginia, it has started. So every time it starts in a new state, we want to share what is going on in that state. And here we are today, Northern Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia, Arlington. I know you guys are familiar with that area. It's called the DC Beltway, right off of 95, all in that area. They're rounding people left and right. Hundreds of arrests they have made in the last week. I'm going to start out and give you some information on what's going on, because there's other things we want to talk about too. The Trump administration vows to ramp up mass deportations, and they are now planning to round up, believe it or not, migrant women and children that already have deportation orders from an immigration judge. This is going to be big, folks. This is going to be interesting. I'm going to play this first clip. Inside an immigration raid in Virginia. Check this out right here.
Seen during an immigration raid in Virginia. Our Rachel Scott there as agents moved in from ICE, the FBI, and other agencies making arrests. Of course, a key issue that will come up tonight during the president's speech. Here's Rachel.
Tonight, the president preparing to tout his signature promise, the largest deportation effort in American history. And well before dawn, we were on the front lines.
And we want to be rolling by 0345.
The administration says they are going after the worst first. They tell us their target here in Northern Virginia, a Guatemalan man in the country illegally with a criminal record.
Almost 4 a.m. and we are now rolling. ICE agents say the subject of the investigation today, a known member of the 18th Street gang.
We are there as heavily armed agents, guns drawn, use flashbangs to get inside, leading the suspect out in cuffs, loading him into a waiting patrol car. Authorities say they've arrested more than 20,000 people since Trump took office. ICE and Border Patrol say more than 43,000 are held in detention. But amid this push, thorny questions emerge, as we see on the second raid of the morning.
Multiple agencies on the ground right now, the FBI, the DEA, the ATF. You can see the agents inside right now.
Armed agents seen through a window making another arrest.
Well, this target here was wanted for sexual assault and for battery, multiple re-entries into the country.
But also in the home, his 2 American children and his brother, who authorities say is also undocumented, but has no known criminal record. That brother could now be deported too. We asked Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem what happens to the children.
There is that likelihood that these families could be separated.
There is consequences, and we're giving him time to leave these children with someone else.
The Department of Homeland Security says they handle these situations involving children on a case-by-case basis. Today, Border Czar Tom Homan telling me the administration is looking to what he calls family residential centers as an option to keep families together, David.
Rachel Scott tonight. Rachel, thank you.
Now, that happened a few days ago. This has been happening. These ICE raids in Virginia have been happening all week long since Glenn Youngkin signed the executive order last Sunday, allowing this, allowing state officials to help with federal authorities to round up these criminals. A lot of the people that are being rounded up already have deportation orders from an immigration judge. They say 1 million to 1.2 have already have orders to be deported. So they're all hiding in the shadows. They're all in neighborhoods. They're all in stash houses. They're all over the place. And ICE is rounding them up. I'm going to share something else too, letting you know what's been going on in Virginia all week long up till today. Here's one and Kristi Noem is there, the DHS, and this is an interesting. It's a sharp contrast to the last administration. You actually have the head honchos, Kristi Noem Tom Homan. They're actually on the front lines. Now, some people say Kristi Noem, it's a photo op or whatever like that, because she's decked out in ICE gear or whatnot. But man, she's out there. She's actually out there when these raids are conducted. To me, my opinion on that is leadership. I mean, if you got the head honcho out there on the front lines with the Border Patrol agents, it kind of sets the tone. And they've been rounding people up at the same time of also being obstructed too by ICE leakers. And we'll get into the ICE leakers shortly, but we want to stay focused on Virginia. So inside an immigration raid in Virginia, let's play what's going on in Virginia.
To crack down on illegal immigration. The administration says they're going after what they call the worst of the worst. These are supposed to be individuals, known criminal records, who are in the country illegally. But as ABC News has witnessed firsthand, it's not stopping there. Family members, including children, are being swept up into the uncertainty of these deportation operations also. Our senior political correspondent Rachel Scott got an up-close look at the ICE raids taking place, even embedding in Virginia with ICE agents overnight during 2 targeted operations. Here's a look.
This family, we don't know what other family members they have. That's why he has 2 days to go locate them and make sure these kids are with someone in their family that they believe will keep them safe and set a better example for them.
There is that likelihood that these families could be separated.
There is consequences, and we're giving him time to leave these children with someone else.
Rachel Scott, join us now as you had a chance to talk with the new DHS secretary there. So give us more insight on what it was like just to see these families, the children, the whole operation, how it goes down. Your thoughts?
Yeah, these were 2 targeted ICE raids, Kira, and so authorities had an idea in mind who exactly they were going after. And in that second location, when I interviewed the DHS secretary, this one was really interesting. They had someone who they said was in the country illegally, who had been deported twice before, then convicted of sexual battery. They knew that he was home. They had someone monitoring his home for hours, but also inside of that residence, 2 children. 2 minors, and also an uncle to those minors. And what they found ultimately is that the uncle may also be in the country illegally, but because he was there with those minors, they ultimately did not apprehend or arrest him, but they gave him 2 days to get it together, to turn himself into authorities, figure out some sort of situation for these minors. And so this really does raise the question, what happens to the children? We are learning by the family members that those 2 children are American citizens. Their mother is not in this country. Their father was arrested this morning, and a family member told us right after he was arrested, they went to school.
Interesting, because Tom Homan, the border czar, was here on set with us, and we asked him about the kids, and he said, look, there's going to be people that are going to be discovered. They may be targeting one family or one person, and then there will be other people kind of caught up in all of this, and they have to take it by a case-by-case basis. But, I mean, I guess, is it fair to say it's nice to see that at least something was done about the kids, or there was time in between to figure out what to do. They didn't swoop in and take the whole family. I mean, how did DHS Secretary Noem address that with you? You know, these kids and what could happen next. Is it going to be a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, this is essentially what DHS is telling us, that this is going to be a case-by-case basis, that every single operation they're going to evaluate what exactly should happen going forward. In this particular instance, you had someone else that was an adult, a family member that was home, that they didn't want to leave those minors home by themselves. But again, if this is now the legal guardian for these two children, these two minors, and this uncle is now potentially deported as well, what exactly happens to those kids? Do they stay in the United States? Do they have other family members? But she very much said this was a case-by-case basis. She also told me, look, these are the consequences. She said, unfortunately, she said that the father put them in this scenario by coming to the country illegally, by committing a crime, and that she believes that those people should be out. But obviously the humanity of this all as well. And you had these two minors watch their father get arrested and then have to proceed on along with the rest of their day and go to school.
Appreciate your reporting. And it's good to get an inside look and try to weave out, okay, what's for show? What are you really seeing on the ground? Did you get a feeling of sort of both?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all hands on deck here. It was not just ICE there. DEA, they also had the ATF, they had the FBI. This was a very large operation, and one that officials honestly had been tracking for a while. When you talk about someone waiting outside of these homes for hours to make sure that these individuals are there so these operations can be successful. And the first operation that we went on was a known gang member. And so here you have ICE agents really interacting with what they are calling violent criminals, this effort to get them out, a priority for the Trump administration.
Rachel Scott, thank you so much.
So you got some journalists tagging on and witnessing these ICE raids. But, you know, it does beg the question, what about the kids? Because there are kids that are with these people. What do you do with the kids? And that's going to be a very complicated. Do you deport the kids too? What about the kids who were born here? It's definitely a discussion, but we're trying to get an understanding also in the process of what happens to these kids when they get rounded up too, or caught in the crossfire, or what happens to people that aren't, what happens to if ICE is going after people that they have deportation orders on because they're doing targeted raids. They know where they're going. But what happens if they're with other people that are in the United States illegally, but they don't have the deportation orders, but they're in the country illegally going through still that process, right? Because, you know, the immigration judges, they'd get their parole, they'd be out on, into the country, who knows, 5, 10 years, whatever. Do they get rounded up too? And apparently, Tom Homan has said, if you are with them, and you're in the country illegally, there's a chance that you're going to go too. Because they're going to check everyone's immigration status while they're with people. But yeah, ICE raids continue to happen in the area. And it's pretty intense here. It's pretty intense here on what's going on. Northern Virginia, I'm also hearing that there have been some ICE raids in the Richmond area, Roanoke area, and the Charlottesville area of Virginia. So you got other cities too, not just Northern Virginia when it comes to these ICE raids. But have they been effective? Have they been effective? Do they work? Do the ICE raids work? And, that's up to debate. I think they're working. I think there's a lot of work to do. They've pretty much set a quota, as we've discussed, 1,800 a day arrests. They're nowhere near that. The numbers show they're probably about 1,000 a day. That is a lot. But considering 10 million, 15 million, it's going to take a long time to get everyone. And we don't even know who lives in the shadows. We don't even know who lives in the shadows, folks. And then there's other policies. Like I hear people in this chat say, end birthright citizenship. They ended TPS. They ended CBB1 apps, different programs. We're also going to talk about possibly 400,000 people from Ukraine that are in this country. They might get deported next. I also believe that the Haitians are going to be deported from Springfield, Ohio. And we'll talk about Springfield, Ohio later. But have these ICE raids been effective? I'm going to play this next clip. It kind of has that conversation. Let's talk about these ICE raids in Virginia. Are they effective or not?
Immigration agents making waves in and around Washington, D.C. with a series of ICE raids this week. The raids leading to strong blowback from local communities, including Arlington, where a series of raids occurred yesterday. Now to discuss these raids and so much more, our very good friend, Renata Castro, the founding member of USA for All, joining us yet again on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, Renata. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so this was a big story yesterday. A lot of folks really up in arms with regard to what took place. You heard me make mention of ICE, in essence, swooping down into a number of neighborhoods, a number of folks detained. Shortly thereafter, right here on this show, we aired a rally to which a number of community members came together saying, you know what, enough is enough. I'm curious, your stance and take on all of this.
I am not surprised with the theatrics of these exhibitions of power. This is more of a PR campaign than an effective strategy to remove individuals. And the reason why I say that is not to say that people are not being deported, but it seems very suspicious that ICE and law enforcement in general are always being filmed in these, which are supposed to be secret actions to detain individuals who are in the United States without status. And based on my experience as an immigration attorney who represents clients all over the United States, most of the individuals being detained do not have a criminal record, which goes completely against what the government has been presenting on their official notes and information. So I think that the community is right to take a position when it comes to questioning the motives, the real motives and the strategies that ICE has been using to detain individuals who are in the United States without status, but don't really pose a threat to the community.
There is a lot of confusion surrounding all of this. And so with that being said, I would like to pose the question, what rights, if any, do immigrants have when agents come looking for them?
It's very complex to distinguish absolute rights to undocumented individuals, particularly because in order for someone to come into your place of residence or into your car, when I say someone, law enforcement, ICE or any other kind of law enforcement, they must present a judicially signed warrant. However, what do? Do you just stay in the house and hope that they will never come back? It's a very challenging situation to live in this fear. But one of the most important rights that any immigrant has in the United States is to not say anything that could be used against him or her in a court of law, and the right to access counsel, even though seeking an attorney will have to be secured by the undocumented alien, meaning the government's not obligated to provide any immigrant with access to representation. But these two things are so important, and in my opinion, even more important than asking for a judicially signed warrant, because if we can remember Trump 1.0, where during the Muslim ban, so many lawful permanent residents actually signed their green cards away under pressures from ICE and CBP. And that is something that we can avoid if immigrants seek their rights through proper legal representation.
With regard to the ICE raids, would you say that this is definitely an intimidation factor being used?
Without question. Not surprisingly, for those who represent immigrants, immigrants are not criminals. They're not dog-eating animals, as this PR campaign spearheaded by the government is presenting it to be. These are hardworking individuals who are actually pillars of the community. They're everyday moms and dads, business owners, people that most of us have contact with and could not imagine our lives without them. And the reason why I bring it up is because a lot of American employers, even those who voted for Trump, are now left scrambling, not knowing what to do with their businesses, which rely so heavily on this immigrant workforce, mainly because they don't have an alternative. So these ICE raids are not meant to reduce the number of undocumented aliens in the United States. It is not meant to enforce law. It's just meant to create panic and for the current government to show that it is doing at least one of the many things it promised to do, and that is to enforce immigration law in the worst way possible.
Wow. Renata, I come from the school of believing that one should pay someone else for their services. However, I'm about to ask you for something for free. And in this case, free services, if you will, with regard to what you're telling your clients when they approach you about this matter.
We have been on a very active campaign educating immigrants as much as we can that they should not fall prey to this horror campaign that's being pushed, because I believe, well, I know that Americans will actually realize that the United States is better because of immigrants, and most importantly, economically, we stand to gain if the United States passes meaningful, reasonable immigration reform. So for those who are my clients or who come in contact with us, we've been saying, make sure to stand your ground. Don't fall prey into this campaign and self-deport. Don't sign papers. And most importantly, remain hopeful. Trump was in government for 4 years, and I don't want to make this a political discourse, but I am a lawyer, and I believe that the law in the United States will always prevail, and that is right for immigrants as well. So make sure that you're seeking representation, remaining hopeful, and remaining a good, law-abiding, contributing citizen of society in the United States.
Yo, I wanted to play that, folks, because there are sides of the media that paint a whole different picture of the situation. Clearly, that segment was to humanize the situation, make people feel like, oh, these people have a right to be here. They're not criminals. This is the problem we have with mainstream media by peddling this type of propaganda out there. I did want to play that because I think it's important, because there is some sides of the media that claim that these people, the ICE is rounding up and DHS are good people, and they've done nothing wrong. They've done nothing wrong. And you see the problem that ICE and the current administration, and I support ICE. I support the administration with this policy, rounding people up. I support it 100%. I'm 100% in support of this. But there's media using mouthpieces that will say that these people are hardworking Americans that are just in the United States for a better life. No, that's not the case. Because what ICE has been doing is the majority of these people that they've been rounding up have been arrested in this country for violent crimes, despicable crimes, RAPE, assault. And that is one of the battles that this administration is facing, the propaganda, certain media, not all of them. Choose your media. Choose your media. But then now this is going to shift to the conversation about ICE leakers, sympathizers. There's leakers and sympathizers out there that are warning the participants when ICE is coming. They're following ICE. They're stalking ICE. They're tracking ICE. I believe they have tracking devices on ICE's vehicles, and they're letting the targets know ahead of time that ICE is coming. Case in point, we'll talk about a reporter from that area there, Northern Virginia, who has been warning when ICE is going to raid the areas. So we're going to play this clip here. Reporter ignites firestorm after details of ICE raids. Check it out.
Here we go again. Another ICE operation has been leaked, this time in Northern Virginia, where agents plan to raid today and tomorrow. After details were posted by a reporter, a migrant activist group then told illegal migrants what to do and what not to do when they meet ICE agents. That includes do not open the door without a warrant signed by a judge, do not sign anything, do not show ID from a foreign country. Jonathan Fahey is a former DHS Deputy Assistant Secretary and former Director of ICE, and he joins me now. Jonathan, good morning to you. So DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said that in the past, leakers have already been found and they have been fired. But this keeps on happening. Who's doing the tipping off, and what can the government do to prevent this from happening in the future?
Well, I don't know who's doing the tipping off. What's interesting, though, a lot of times these big operations not only involve federal agents, but sometimes they involve state and local officials because you have to involve them, letting them know people are going to be brought into the jail and things like that. But what can be done? These could be, people could be charged with obstruction of justice, which is a federal felony, carries up to 10 years in prison. And it's really justified here because these agents that are going out there on behalf of us to keep us safer are being put in danger because of these leakers trying to advance their political agenda. So this is extraordinarily serious. Nobody has been, hurt or killed at this point because we know, but somebody really bad may have already gotten away and can harm somebody else. So I hope they're taking this as seriously as possible. I'm sure the Department of Justice is investigating these with the appropriate resources with the intention of holding people accountable.
What about the people online, Jonathan, the people who are hearing from these sources that they have within the government and then posting this information on Twitter? Can they be prosecuted?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. If you are basically you're promoting information for the sole intent to obstruct or impede an investigation, I think that's something they will look into. I think that's maybe a more aggressive approach, but it's certainly the people leaking it will be in the crosshairs and then subsequent from there. But they should be put on notice that these are putting people in danger, and if you are doing something with the intention to obstruct or impede an investigation, that's obstruction of justice under the law, and you could be prosecuted for it.
Okay, well, it's going to be an interesting week because on Capitol Hill, the House Oversight Committee is going to have a hearing, and the mayors of the sanctuary cities, New York City, Chicago, Denver, Boston, are going to testify. I mean, it's going to be a public dressing down, but how important, how significant do you think this hearing could be, and will anything change as a result of this?
This is extremely important for one reason. The public needs to know what these sanctuary cities actually are doing, and the whole purpose of them is not to keep the kids in a preschool from being deported. It's to get people in jail to remain in their communities, which is astonishing to me. And it's the fact that it's persisted so long is also even worse. So what they've been doing is preventing ICE from being able to take people from local jails and remove them from the country because they want to encourage more illegal aliens in their community and keep existing illegal aliens in their community. But the one thing that's also really interesting, these mayors are walking a fine line. They've been doing this a long time, but it certainly doesn't mean it's legal. There's an offense under the federal law called harboring, which means if you're doing anything to shield, conceal, or harbor an illegal alien in this country or in the community, or encourage somebody to reside here illegally, that's a federal offense called harboring. And these policies, as well as the actions of these mayors and other officials, are certainly walking a very close line on that. So it'll be interesting how they answer it. Are they going to admit the purpose of our policy is to keep illegal aliens in this community? I think that's a problem. So they're going to try to walk this line. I think that you'll see some false testimony, which will say they're doing it to not scare the immigrant community and things like that. But what we know is they're doing it precisely to keep illegal alien criminals in the community because non-sanctuary cities are effectively. So this will be quite interesting. It'll be a dressing down, but it'll be interesting how they answer because of criminal liability that might be at hand.
And then ultimately, they did testify, you heard, and now a Congresswoman, Anna Paulina Luna, referring those mayors over for criminal charges. But it talks about these leakers in Virginia. And guess what, folks? We have breaking news. Kristi Noem just announced today that two leakers have been identified who have been disclosing ICE operations. And she claims that they put them, law enforcement, in jeopardy. That's a big, big deal. So we're going to play this clip right now. ICE raid leakers found will face prosecution. Check it out.
Security Secretary Kristi Noem says that they have identified the leakers who exposed the locations of upcoming immigrations and custom enforcement raids. This is a big deal, and our Bill Melugin has got the details. Bill.
Yeah, John, good afternoon to you. Just a short time ago, DHS officials confirmed to Fox News they say they have identified 2 people within DHS who they say they have caught leaking information about ICE operations to different targets and then put those operations in jeopardy. We got a video from DHS Secretary Kristi Noem herself making this announcement, was just sent over to us. Take a look.
Everyone, I wanted to give you a quick update. We have identified 2 leakers of information here at the Department of Homeland Security who have been telling individuals about our operations and putting law enforcement lives in jeopardy. We plan to prosecute these 2 individuals and hold them accountable for what they've done. And we're going to continue to do all that we can to keep America safe.
And a DHS spokesperson also sent us the following statement on record, which says, quote, "We are preparing to refer these perpetrators to the DOJ for felony prosecutions. These individuals face up to 10 years in federal prison. We will find and root out all leakers. They will face prison time, and we will get justice for the American people." Now, to that point, we do want to point out that this is just a referral. It is ultimately going to be up to the Department of Justice on whether or not they want to move forward with prosecutions of these alleged leakers. You have to keep in mind these individuals, whoever they are, will also have due process, and they would have to be either found guilty or put in a guilty plea if we want to talk about any sort of prison time. But guys, this is obviously very significant. You're looking at video from an ICE raid in Aurora, Colorado last month. I was on that operation. It failed. It leaked. There were media reports that the raid was coming days in advance. The same thing happened for an operation here in Los Angeles. Another operation in Virginia just leaked a few days ago. There was also another leak in Chicago. These leaks have been widespread. It has happened multiple times. They have seemed to be getting worse and worse. And we've seen people from the Trump administration going on television saying that these leaks are putting ICE officers in jeopardy. It's putting the operations in jeopardy, and that they're going to track down, find these leakers, and prosecute them. And according to DHS and Secretary Noem, it appears they've taken the first step towards that process. Again, they say they've identified 2 people within DHS. That's important. They're within the Department of Homeland Security, so they're privy to this information, and they're going to seek to prosecute them. They'll send those referrals over to DOJ. DOJ will take a look at it. It will be up to DOJ to decide whether or not to move forward with any type of potential prosecution. But some breaking news here on this Friday for you guys. John.
All right, Bill Melugin for us with the breaking news update. Bill, thank you.
Whoa. Some people would say that's traitors within DHS that are leaking out to the sympathizers. Why, though? Why would they do that? Why would they risk their freedom? We covered a Border Patrol agent that was just indicted down there in El Paso that was also sympathetic towards the illegals and letting them know things. Traitors. I call them traitors. You might feel otherwise. ICE leakers, ICE raids happening across the country. Now, I'm going to stay with Virginia a minute because just the other day, there was a massive protest. Well, not a massive protest, but a pretty good protest of, sympathizers calling out ICE. You know, every time that they do these ICE raids, there's these protesters that gather. They were doing it in Los Angeles surrounding ICE raids. Now they're doing it again in Northern Virginia while we're on the Northern Virginia topic. Now they were protesting, and I have a clip. We'll just listen in. They take some questions. They're standing there holding their signs, and they're saying that they don't want ICE in their neighborhoods and whatnot. Typical stuff that we've covered before protesting. But I want to take you to the questionnaire, the Q&A, when people ask questions and they talk about what is going on in the neighborhoods in Virginia, in their eyes, in their perspective. But I think it's important to get that information out there, so I'm going to share that with you right here, right now.
Thank you, Julio. Thank you, everyone. And now we can open it up to questions if y'all have questions. Ahorita podemos tener espacio para preguntas si hay preguntas. So, especially for the folks who spoke, we are going to open it up for questions, so just heads up. But then also I know a few other people might have answers in case anything. Vamos a hacer preguntas, nomás voy a estar avisándole a las personas que hablaron. Beatriz y John.
They're going to talk about these ICE raids.
I'm going to share a few examples.
What we're seeing in our communities is criminalization. What we are seeing is fear. We are seeing armored vehicles coming into our communities, busting down doors, coming into homes and terrorizing our neighbors. All that's happening here is creating fear. And we're asking our elected officials to come up with some tangible solutions for this. Because what we are seeing on the ground and what we are feeling in our communities is terror.
Okay, cosas que han pasado en estos días es, han llegado patrullas, andan en carros particulares, pero también han llegado botando puertas, sacando a nuestra gente en las madrugadas, esperándoles cuando salen de sus casas y van camino a sus carros para trabajar. Están llegando a oficinas de apartamentos a buscar a personas en específico y están sembrando mucho miedo en nuestras comunidades.
So things that have happened include different undercover vehicles showing up in our communities, agents stopping people as people are trying to get to their cars to get on the way to work. They have also been breaking doors down in our homes, and also even harassing apartment complexes, asking for certain people.
I'll also say something that we have seen is ICE have been staking out in areas where we take our children to schools, which has caused insecurities of children not attending schools, and that's one thing we really want to highlight. Regarding the hotline, we have received a few calls, not from today, but I think it's important to highlight that this not just happened yesterday and today. What has been going on has been happening since day one of this administration, where there's cases of racial profile. There are cases of just approaching someone because they look brown, they look different, asking those questions without them having anything else on them besides the color of their skin, and then being detained and transferred to detention centers that we have here in Virginia, which are Farmville and Caroline. And we know from history here in the Commonwealth that these detention centers are awful. We ask and we demand to continue to end detention centers here in the Commonwealth. And those are just one things that we want to share. It's not just about these Tuesdays. It's been since day one, since we've been seeing these issues.
Inquilinos y Trabajadores Unidos, nomás agradecemos este espacio que están tomando todas las organizaciones, miembros de la comunidad, aliados en solidaridad en este momento difícil. Y aunque nosotros no estamos en Arlington, pero estamos en el norte de Virginia, nuestra comunidad está sintiendo el impacto, por lo cual están nuestros niños de las escuelas elementarias. Nos enteramos ayer que casi 100 estudiantes de una escuela elementaria no fueron a la escuela.
Y este es el gran temor que tienen nuestros niños, nuestras familias, nuestros hogares. Esto nos causa una gran ansiedad y temor. Y estamos aquí para demostrar que estamos como comunidad, como aliados, y que lo hemos pasado desafortunadamente esto hace 8 años, pero podemos seguir adelante todo en unión y solidaridad. Ingrid Moran, Tenants and Workers United, so we are really grateful for being in this space and community as community partners and allies. And even though we don't work with community members in Arlington, our community members are feeling the impact. We heard yesterday, just in one Alexandria City Public School elementary school, about 100 students didn't go to school, elementary school children. Our families are being targeted purposely. We are being racial profiled regardless of our status, whether we have papers or not. And so we stand here in solidarity. We will continue to be resilient. We've been through this, unfortunately, before 8 years ago, and we'll continue to stand in solidarity with all our community members. Thank you.
Other questions? Otras preguntas? I wondered if you could speak to what feels different about this moment, what concretely is happening that is different compared to the Biden administration.
So the question is, what's the difference now versus what we saw in the Biden administration?
In terms of concrete actions.
So I think it's important to name that immigrants were under attack in the Biden administration too. The Biden administration went into office with about 15,000 people in detention, and when he left office, there were tens of thousands of people in detention. What we saw under the Biden administration was a little bit of a shift in focus and enforcement, in which the Biden administration, one, had mainly focused on border enforcement, completely ending the right to asylum at the border to really sort of block people from entering the U.S. and forcing them to wait for months in Mexico. And the interior enforcement piece was really focused less on sort of these big showy tactics and was much more sort of targeted towards people who, it was sort of targeted and less dramatic. I think one of the things that's really important to say about what the Trump administration is doing is, one, they have issued many executive orders that allow their officers to do things that previously were not allowed. This looks like being able to revoke parole from individuals so that people who even have some type of status to be here, if they encounter ICE has the ability to immediately snatch that status and make them undocumented. We have seen a massive increase in force. Despite what this Trump administration likes to say about who they are targeting, it is absolutely false. They are trying to say that the people that are being targeted are people that make our communities unsafe, and we know that that's absolutely not true. Not only through the data that shows that most of the people that are getting detained have no criminal record, but more than that, that these people are our neighbors, these people have families, these people have relationships with, you know, their schools and their churches and are members of our community. And I think the sort of last piece is that this administration is really playing a game of show. That for them, they want to be able to create these moments in which people are scared. They're trying to create an environment in which everyday people feel so unsafe and so under attack in their homes that they want to deport themselves. And that really is, I think, the goal of this administration, is to just make the lives of immigrant communities so miserable. But we know that it's not going to work, because these are our friends, these are our neighbors, these are members of our community, and we know we will stand up and protect them. And we know that their tactics are not working, because people are being released from detention, people are organizing like we are seeing today to protect their communities, and they want people to think that immigrants do not have rights. They get mad when groups, tell people how to protect their rights and they're, not answering the door, protecting their Fourth Amendment rights. And that is something that this administration is pretending that it does not exist, solely for the purpose of creating these media shows of community cruelty, to up the ante of the fear that they are trying to create.
I'll also just add real quick, if anybody here can correct me, Tom Homan still worked for ICE during Biden, right?
No.
At the beginning? No? He stopped. Okay.
But he did work under Obama.
Obama, that was the one. Democrats, right? The same guy, right?
All right. So the point was, I just wanted to play a little glimpse of how misinformed and how it appears these people spreading a lot of misinformation. It seems like they're the ones stoking fear in the community, making people feel like, oh, well, they're going to go for all innocent people. No. ICE has orders to get and round up the people that already have deportation orders. Virginia. So, yeah, that's part of the problem that ICE is facing. I call them obstructionists. I call them protesters. They're protesters, obstructionists. But is it a small group? Well, this type of group is the one that's given ICE a lot of problems with their raids across the country, not just in Northern Virginia, but all over the place. Now, I do want to share another story that's coming out. It seems like ICE is now ramping up also detaining migrant families with children, but there's a catch to this. These are people that already have deportation orders. If you got deportation orders and you don't enforce those orders, how are you going to have a society? You're just going to defy it and say, even though you're deported, you can stay anyway. That's not how it works, folks. It's not how it works. Every single person that crossed the United States illegally can seek asylum and they can make their claim. And if their claim is valid, they can actually stay. But the claims that these people are making are so egregious and frivolous, get out. That's the result. So I want to play this new clip now that's coming out. I guess they're going to re-up the deportations. And then this time, they are going to do migrant families with children. So let me play this clip right here.
Right now to the latest on President Trump's mass deportation plans. CBS News has learned the Trump administration is reviving the controversial practice of detaining migrant families with children in ICE custody. CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez joins us here live in Studio 55. Camilo, always great to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Family detention. Controversial term we've heard of so many times. Is this really a feasible option, especially considering the capacity of these ICE facilities?
Well, make no mistake, Errol, this is a significant change by the Trump administration. Long-term family immigration detention was discontinued in 2021 back during the Biden administration because advocates and other officials argued that it was harmful to children and their psychological well-being, because we're talking about parents who are crossing the border illegally with minor children who are under the age of 17. And now the Trump administration is converting 2 detention facilities run by Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE in Texas into family detention centers. In fact, one in Carn City, south of San Antonio, is now housing several families, including 3 children, we have learned here at CBS News. And the question about conditions is a good one, because advocates will argue that there are no conditions that are adequate to be detaining minor children. But of course, the Trump administration believes that this is needed to deter migrant families from crossing the border illegally.
Now, dissolving temporary protected status, the program, has been a target for the Trump administration. And how might that, though, impact Ukrainian refugees, because so many of them are also in the U.S. under that protection?
It's a critical question. Just to level set, back in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the Biden administration set up a program known as Uniting for Ukraine that allowed Americans to sponsor the entry and the arrival of Ukrainian refugees fleeing that conflict. And hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians came under that process. That program has since been suspended by the Trump administration, and the administration is considering ending it and potentially revoking the legal status of the individuals who came under that policy. But we are told by officials at the Department of Homeland Security that no final decisions have been made yet. And when it comes to temporary protected status, or TPS, that was also granted to Ukrainians, and the administration is moving quickly to phase out many TPS programs, and it has already done so for Venezuelans and Haitians.
And with they're Ukrainian or from Central or South America, you wonder what happens to these people, their families, their livelihood. Another topic that you've been doing some in-depth reporting on is how immigration and policies are impacting the price of milk. Tell us about that.
That's right. So we traveled to the heart of America's dairyland, Wisconsin, to see firsthand how interconnected the issues of immigration, milk production, and labor are, and they are very much deeply connected. We went to one farm that really is a microcosm of that situation. The farmer there told us that most of his employees are in the U.S. illegally. They are immigrants from Mexico, and that he has tried to hire American citizens to work on the farm to milk the cows, but none have showed up to apply for that job. And so he has to rely now on undocumented immigrants for labor. And we posed him the question, what happens, Errol, if all these people who are working on your farm are deported as the Trump administration would like? And he said he would go out of business immediately.
It's another example of these employers saying they would hire Americans if Americans would take those jobs. I'm eager to see some more of your reporting. Camilo Montoya-Galvez, great to see you.
Thanks, Errol.
Thanks for this. And to learn more.
He actually is a CBS border reporter. He actually goes to the border a lot, but I think CBS plays more sympathetic towards now CBS when their reports. And I just wanted to share that because they're talking about this new program, or they're ramping up, deporting women and children that have deportation orders. Let me stress that. But they play more like sympathetic towards the migrants and stuff like that. Again, know your network on who you listen to, because some of the networks will just look for anything and everything to make ICE and the administration look bad when it comes to these mass deportations. The key word is criminals that are being rounded up, or people that have the deportation orders in play. If you've got orders, if you don't enforce their orders, you don't have laws. That's plain and simple. But in the meantime, I do want to play one more thing for you all. While we're having all these mass deportations, the cartels on the southern border are still ramping up, trying to sneak people in, trying to sneak the drugs, the fentanyl, the weapons. The coyotes are coming through, shipments of drugs, and secret tunnels. Tunnels is going to be the big problem here, because they have the border secure as far as the wall, the drones up in the sky, the wire, the buoys, the National Guard, states' National Guards helping Texas. We're talking about Texas. But even though you got a border wall, the cartels are trying to go under the wall. Under the wall. So it's not stopping them. There's a war on the cartel, too. We've discussed that extensively. But News Nation just came out with this new report in the Texas Rio Grande sector. They're dismantling hidden tunnels. So they're securing the border at all aspects. But the cartels are being sneaky with the tunnels. I want to just share this about the tunnels. Check it out.
Here we go again. Another ICE operation has been leaked, this time in Northern Virginia, where agents plan to raid today and tomorrow. After details were posted by a reporter, a migrant activist group then told illegal migrants what to do and what not to do when they meet ICE agents. That includes do not open the door
And with these migrant counters now down along the southern border, agents say that they are ramping up these efforts to dismantle human smuggling operations. But they do say that smugglers are now becoming more sophisticated, now using tunnels as a broader network of illegal entries along the southern border. Now, we got the chance to join the Marine unit in the RGV sector. These agents are viewed as really the first line of defense against illegal immigration and drug trafficking into the U.S. Now, the area that we joined agents was common for smugglers to use rafts to get migrants across the river and onto U.S. soil. But it's not just rafts anymore that agents have to watch for. Smugglers have now taken their operations underground. Along the banks of the Rio Grande, we actually approached a makeshift tunnel that smugglers had been using and building out. They actually even installed a pipe before agents were able to locate this tunnel and then seal it off with cement. Agents tell me that it was only halfway completed and never fully operational, but it is one of the many along the banks of the Rio Grande that smugglers are now adapting their methods along the border. Then smugglers also are now using a drainage system in that same area that's now Border Patrol agents were able to block off with a cage. They had to build out a cage because smugglers were continuing to not only use that drainage system, but they were building out tunnels nearby, and cartel operatives say they're still attempting to repurpose it. You could also see fresh cuts that were being made along that drainage system and the nearby tunnels. Clear signs that smugglers are testing weak points along the border, and smugglers never stop along this system. They're also digging out makeshift tunnels along that drainage system, just finding any entry point to bypass Border Patrol agents. Take a listen from one of the agents from the Marine unit had to say about these tunnels.
Once they start digging holes like that, you gotta be extra careful and not just look at the actual drain, but look around, and that's how we found that other one.
Agents say that they're remaining extra cautious with even more tunnels being built out. Once agents uncovered it, they even found some with 2x4s reinforcing the walls, and even with a wooden door, showing just how much effort has gone into the construction. Agents tell us that smugglers go into the middle of the night attempting to build out these tunnels. What was interesting, Marnie, is this was my first time in my years reporting on the border seeing tunnels along the banks of the Rio Grande. I've only seen the tunnels from the Mexican side in Juarez that led into El Paso. So once again, just showing how smugglers are adapting to the new crackdown on illegal immigration on the border. Marnie.
Right. And to that point, I mean, they are getting more creative, Jorge. They're using the tunnels and also rafts to evade Border Patrol. What are some of the other ways they're staying a step ahead of Border Patrol in all this?
So while we were embedded with the Marine unit, agents say that the Marine unit there in the RGV sector is really one of the most dangerous jobs within Border Patrol. So while migrant encounters on the ground are down and the border is quiet, those agents with the Marine unit are the ones that are actually constantly being watched and monitored by smugglers and cartel scouts on the Mexican side. These scouts and cartel members actually use homes and buildings along the banks of the Rio Grande. These are vantage points to always be constantly monitoring the movements of Border Patrol agents. We were taken nearby this home here, which you're looking at. This is along the banks of the Rio Grande. It is one of the many views by scouts to monitor law enforcement from a distance. Now, the second floor of that home actually had a one-way mirror, which I found extremely interesting. This allowed scouts in that home to watch agents while also going undetected. From there, they also have this advantage of actually communicating to smugglers and scouts exactly where to find those weak points to smuggle those groups of migrants. And it's not smugglers just going underground. They're still using the river too. During our ride-along, Border Patrol agents showed us what they call a landing area. This is where smugglers use rafts to bring migrants across. We can actually still notice fresh footprints in that area, where agents say that that area was actually just used the day before we even arrived. So it's not just tunnels that remain critical crossing points. It's also these landing areas that we got to witness ourselves.
We come here every day, and you'll notice different things on the landings. So, for example, if we come here and check this landing wasn't used yesterday. We come the next day and there's something there.
And Marty, once one of the key kind of differences already from the previous administration to the Trump administration when it comes to illegal immigration is that before, smugglers would actually move in these groups of migrants, and these migrants wanted to turn themselves into Border Patrol agents because they would be paroled into the country. Now, that has completely changed. So smugglers are now smuggling smaller groups of migrants, but they are now looking to completely evade authorities. So that's something that authorities say that there now is a bigger focus and shift on under this new administration, Marty.
All right, Jorge, thank you. Thank you for watching.
Great report down there on the border. So that's another new struggle they have dealing with these cartels, scouters, tunnels, while they continue to secure the border. But yeah, this is ICE raids in Virginia. It's expanding, folks. What city and state will be next? Where will they continue to do the ICE raids? They plan to ramp up this ICE raid operation pretty much in all 50 states and then make it all day, every day. But as we've been showing, you know, these raids happen at night, early morning, even in the middle of the day. You got 10 million, 15 million to catch. 1,000 a day is pretty good, but do the math. 1,000 times 365 only gets you 365,000 in 1 year. That means you would have to take 30 years to get 10 million. You know what I mean? So they're going to have to ramp this up. Nevertheless, it is going on for sure. All right, folks. Signing off. JLR Investigates. Wanted to inform you what's going on in Virginia. The next state that they do ICE raids, you will hear it here on JLR Investigates. Sub to the channel. Like, hit the notification button. Let me know what you think. We are a border coverage channel. In case you're new, welcome. A lot of you in the chat know about the border coverage that we've done. We will continue to do so moving forward. Stay safe out there. If you see something, say something. Stay vigilant. We'll talk soon. Have a good day, everyone. JLR